Okay, well, we're back again here, and it looks like we're going to be able to finish off our lettering, our drawing part of this, and then with any luck for the remainder of the session here, we'll spend some time getting it colored, or beginning at least the coloring of it, and we'll clean it up a little bit first to make sure that it is ready to color. And so our message, an ounce of prevention is greater than a pound of cure, is what we're working on. And in this case, we've got to draw in some mathematical symbols. Not everything is spelled out in a piece of artwork with, in fact, we're not even using English letters anyway. We're using this symbolic language that's based on Navy flags. However, we can use mathematical symbols because, that says is greater than, in one symbol, rather than having to spell that all out with multiple letters. And same thing for pound. That's multiple letters it would take, but we can signify it with one symbol. So sometimes we take creative liberties. So since we're doing a couple of letters that are not on our chart anyway, we're simply going to try to figure out a way to do these accurately. Now, the greater than symbol, I would do this. I'm going to make a mark at 1.5 inches down my box. And then I'm going to, from the corner, from this dot to the top left corner of the box, I want to draw a line lightly. There's parts of it I'll probably erase later. Okay, then I'm going to do the same thing over on this side, I believe. And I'm going to put it right up against that. And so I've got kind of like a large triangle in this area in here. Now, my next thing is I'm going to measure, not even measure in, just to estimate in, a good bit, about right here perhaps is a good spot. And I'm going to use my ruler again, but now I need to be very careful to make this mark so that it's parallel to the line I just made a moment ago. And I won't bold it yet, but I'll draw it parallel for sure. Okay, we'll do the exact same thing in this orientation. We can look at our dot here that we just made, and we want this to go parallel to this line. And so we draw that line in like that. And if you, by the way, if you roll your pencil a lot in your fingertips, you'll always keep it sharp. Okay, now that takes up a lot of space and might not be obvious as a greater than symbol to everybody. So I'm going to cut off a portion of it, maybe about right here. So estimate in a bit, and then we're going to use our ruler, and we are going to orient it straight up and down, and we're going to draw a line representing where we will erase this and this out of there, and we should have a nice uniform looking greater than symbol. So let's carefully erase that without erasing everything we just took the time to draw, and that really was not all that complicated. When we color this in, it will give us an additional problem to solve, but we'll do that during the period of time when we start coloring it in, because it's not on our worksheet, so we'll be given a bit of a small dilemma about what color it should be, and we don't want people mistaking it for a letter of the alphabet, so we may have to come up with a solution for that. So there's our greater than symbol. Some people would maybe split the background creatively a little bit more, but I think in this case I'm just going to leave it alone, although I might give it a little horizontal split, maybe I'm just going to leave it alone for now. I think that's a wise idea. You can always fix it up later. Okay, the pound sign, also a little more complicated, but I think we've got some markings that are going to help us already with it. So this is kind of tricky. Normally I would try to make it at an angle, and I think I still will. So here's what we got to do. We've got to set ourselves up with some layout lines, and so we're going to make, since we got this right here, we're going to make a mark about right here, and we're going to make a mark about halfway down. So once again, the half-half thing. And we're going to use these two registration dots to make stripes with. So I think if we take that dot and we slide down just a bit, and we're going to draw a horizontal line lightly that can be erased later. And do the same thing above that dot. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We're going to draw a line. Parts of it will need to be erased later. We're going to do the same thing with our registration dot above. We're going to find our dot. We're going to slide down a bit, about the same distance. Here, let's do it this way. We're going to find our dot, slide up a bit, and we're going to reference down here, make sure it's the same distance, or at least close. And then we're going to draw our line. And we'll do the same thing below this. This time we can turn our ruler around like this. So we find our dot, slide it down just a bit. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now what we have here is the two sidewards markings on this. Now I am going to I'm going to estimate a bit, and I'm going to, let's say, I'm going to come in about this far, and I'm going to make a mark. And that way I will be able to cut off the ends of this, you know, nicely. So I'm going to take that and I'll erase this and this part out. Okay, so this is kind of it's like the letter N in a lot of ways. However, it takes a little bit more attention to what you're doing in order to make it look attractive here, I believe. Okay. Seems like we're making some progress on this. So we're going to do a similar measurement or estimation from about this distance right here. We're going to go over here and come in about this distance. We're going to make a little mark. And then we're going to put our ruler on that mark. And we're going to use that to cut off the ends of those horizontal stripes we just made. So now it looks like a big equals sign. And in some of the phrases, we use an equal sign. In other phrases, we also use the does not equal sign. We've used in some of the 8th grade phrases the greater than or equal to sign. Alright, so this is looking pretty good. Now we've just got to put in what would be the vertical stripes on our pound sign. Now I'm going to do this at an angle because I think it looks more visually attractive personally. So I'm going to reference my letter N, and I'm going to tilt it just a bit from that line right there, something about like this, and I'm going to make a mark, and I'm just going to lightly make this mark, and it will run almost all the way through all of this. Now I have to kind of estimate the thickness of this stripe again. So whatever the thickness of this stripe is, I'm going to try to estimate that with this, and I'm going to run parallel to it. Okay, and it looks about right. And I'm going to do that again from this marking. I'm going to tilt it at an angle. And then I'm going to draw a line, parallel. And then I'm going to try to make this next stripe as thick as the first stripe. So whatever this distance is right here, I'm trying to do that again right here. And that looks about right. You can also look at these diamond shapes. See these diamond shapes? And if this diamond shape and this diamond shape are about the same, you've done it right. Okay, let's see. So we want to make that line. I probably should have made these lines a little bit longer than I did. Alright, now this is kind of complicated, it seems, but it's going to work out. Alright, now we're going to try to cut this off about right here. And we want that to be level with the other ones. So we make our marking. We make our marking over here. Okay, then we'll do the same thing up here. We want this distance here to be about the same. So I'm going to put a marking right there. I'm going to use the bottom of my ruler this time. And I'm going to make a mark. Or make a mark. Now, we've got a lot of erasing to do here before we finish this character up. This is probably the most complicated character in the entire message, I'm thinking. So it can take a little bit longer to do, but if you are, attentive to what you're doing, you won't have to fix it a bunch of times. And so that's where most people mess up. They don't have much patience. And so what we're creating here is a pound sign in the old school, or a hashtag symbol in the new school. Okay, now let's see what we've created here. Now this is not quite symmetrical to my taste, and so I'm going to do some things to it. I'm going to just freehand this end so it's tilted at an angle, which I think is visually much more interesting. I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm going to tilt this one at an angle as well, because these are tilted at an angle, see? And then I will erase this out. If I can get it out, there we go. So I will go around here momentarily and tighten up my work. Okay, so that's what I've got there. Same thing here. Now when I color this, I will take a moment just to clean it up just a little bit more before we get ready to color it. Now if I've done that on one side here, it probably follows or stands to reason that I should probably do it on the other side as well. So instead of extending it this way, I'll extend it this way. And I'm going to, down here, this looks a little long if you ask me, so I'm just going to cut that whole corner off, I guess. About right here, I suppose. So I'll take this, erase that out. We'll put this like this, so we got that little sharp corner showing up there, and erase this part out. Okay, now let's draw it back in the way it was meant to be. There we go. So we've got it in the way it was meant to be. We're going to try to erase this, and I think we've got ready to get going here with the next part. Okay, now that seemed to take forever, and you might be right, but we're going to go back and we're going to touch these lines up anywhere they got erased out, and we're going to just fix up our pound sign, and it's going to look fine every time I make pound sign. Look at that, I forgot that one line. Drives me crazy. It's got to go. This one's got to go. It's got to be accurate. If you're like me, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, now let's get rid of this. Alright, so that seemed to take a great deal of time, but it was worth the experience, because now we've got a pretty nice looking pound sign, and I can go back with a ruler and just really, really bear down on it to make it show up accurately, you know. So I think it was worth the extra time and effort personally, and we'll come back and address this before we do the coloring portion of it. So it's come along very nicely. Okay, let's move on to the letter O down here. Well, that's going to be easy. Simply go from one corner. Let's look at a reference sheet. From letter O. Yep, same thing. From the top left to the lower right. With your ruler. And that's how far we go with that. Now we're back to the letter F again. Now if you really recall, earlier we had our letter F up here, and I measured it off. Some people will estimate it. I believe the measuring is the way to go with this particular one, so I'm going to measure it again. If you want to see how to estimate it, you should probably back up the video, I suppose. But I'm going to measure off at 1.5. I'm going to measure off here at 1.5, put a little mark right there against the line, a registration dot. So I'm going to kind of bold those a little bit so you can see them on the video. Same thing here. I'm going to, at the top, measure off 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to bold that a little bit so you can see it, and I'm going to do the same thing down the left side of the box, coming down to about 1.5 inches right there. Now if I made my measurements accurate, and if my boxes are 3 inches, and that they should be, I should be able to connect all of these dots right where they touch the line on the grid. So it looks to me like they're going to line up pretty. Oh my goodness, I let my ruler skid. That's alright. Okay, you just go around and continue to connect them right where they touch the edge of the box. It's probably better to do it this way so you can see what you're drawing. Okay, so we put it like that. And then the same thing yet again this way. And we should have come out with once again, a very attractive diamond shape in the middle of all of this, rather than just whatever comes out. So we're making great progress. I'm feeling confident that we'll be able to finish up the cure here before the end of the period, or at least the end of this session. So I've got to go back and re-sharpen my pencil again. So when you're sharpening your pencil, I mean, I don't think you really need a super fine point. When you try to do that, you end up just breaking the lead off, and next thing you know, you're always sharpening a pencil. You're not doing anything else. Now, we've got the letter F. We're moving on to the letter C. This is a letter we haven't done yet, so this particular message has a lot of different types of letters going on. Now, there's 5 stripes in the letter C. Let's look at our reference chart here. Yeah, so it's got a center stripe and then halfway above and below the center stripe. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stripes. And in order to create this, we're going to have to put the center stripe in first. And just like down here with the letter Y, it's got 9 stripes, and we had to do the center stripe first. So anytime you have an odd number of stripes, you've got to really do the center stripe first. Now, I know that I measured that off, so I'm confident that that is at the right place. Halfway, so I'm going to find that, and I'm going to use that marking, and I'm going to raise up a bit so I can start I'm going to do the center stripe of the letter C first, and I draw a marking. Okay, it should be parallel to the grid lines, horizontal. I'm going to do the same thing below it. I'm going to lower it down until it's about the same distance. You want to estimate the distance from here to here pretty accurately. Okay, so that looks pretty good, so I'll go ahead and mark that. So now, if we were looking at our worksheet, it would be this brown stripe that I put in is already done for our letter C. Now we're going back to the half-half thing again, just like we do in the letter N. So we're going to go about halfway and make a mark. We're going to go about halfway and make a mark. Now this time we'll just use the marks to literally draw the line from. So we find our registration marking right there. We make sure our ruler is nice and level, and we draw off a mark, and then we do the same thing above it. So I like to use the bottom of my ruler in this case, so I can try to match it to the lines I've already drawn here. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and if done properly, we should have come out with 5 stripes that look pretty good. So here's what we're trying to achieve, and here's what we got. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stripes. Very nice. That'll work out fine. Now, that brings us to some of the easier letters now, or at least in this case, the letter U is the same shape as the letter L, and it's ironic that they're the same shape but different colors, and that's a good thing. So the letter U is pretty easy to draw if we have made measurements or accurate estimates in these other areas. So we're simply going to divide it in half and then in half again. Now I know I made an accurate measurement there, so I'm going to orient my ruler. If you didn't, you need to estimate about halfway across, or measure off 1.5 inches. So I'm using my ruler. It looks pretty straight up and down there, and I'm just going to continue that line to the bottom of this, and I've divided it in half. Now, I also, over here with the letter F and the little tick mark or the registration mark I made for C, I know that's halfway because I measured it off. If you didn't measure it, then you should probably estimate and put a dot there somewhere. But I'm going to use these to help me get a better marking. So I find a little mark for the F, and right there in the center of the stripe of the letter C, and I orient my ruler carefully, hold it down firmly, and then I'm going to make my mark. And if I did it right, I should have it 4 pretty even squares, and it looks pretty good. Alright. We're making quite a bit of progress here today. And so we're going to go back to the letter R. This is one of these more complex ones, and we're going to set it up just like we did right here, very similar to the letter V as well. And we're going to mark it similar to the way we just did the letter U. Now, we don't have anything to really measure off here. We can probably use this. We can go from this marking right here. Otherwise, it would be 1.5 inches. So that's right on the money. So 1.5 inches, or estimate halfway down, and we're going to make a layout line very lightly drawn so that it can be erased later. Now up here, we're simply out of luck. We're going to have to just measure. So we take our ruler, we put it on the line here. It should be 3 inches wide. At 1.5 inches, we're going to make a marking at 1.5 inches. And we're going to turn it vertically, straight up and down, parallel to this grid line. We're going to make a light marking so that we can erase it later. Now we're back to reproducing the letter R up here like we've seen before. So we take our ruler, find our layout line, scoot over a bit. Okay, and we're going to draw a vertical line, slightly darker. We're going to do the same thing again on the other side. We find that layout line, we scoot over a bit, so it's about the same width as our first mark. And there we go. Okay, now does it have to be perfect? Not necessarily, but pretty close. So we find our sideways layout line and we slide down just a little bit. And what we should see is squares begin to develop. It would be better if they were all the same size. However, in this case, they're not, but they're pretty close. So I'm going to have to just cope. So once I find that area, I'm going to cut it in half. Not cut it in half, I'm going to mark a line. And then similarly again, I find this, I slide up a bit, and now I should be able to see that it forms 2 more squares or 1 big square when I add them all together. Okay, I hold down my ruler and I make my marking parallel to the layout lines. That gives me a chance now to clean this up a bit. And we'll have a properly drawn plus symbol, which if we look at our letters here, it's this one right here. And this one on the worksheet's not so good, but the one on the project is much better. So that's why I don't sweat the details too much on the worksheet. Although you should practice those letters on the worksheet when we are drawing them in the previous instructional video. If we were in the physical classroom, we would also be doing this together, drawing it out with rulers and straight edges and erasers. And it would take us a few days to get it done. In this case, it's alright. Well, we were doing our letter R here. We're just about to finish the drawing portion of this up, and so the letter E, simply sideways marking. I don't see what could be easier than the letter E, easy E. So we're going to orient our ruler. It should be about right here, halfway down this marking we did for the letter R, I'm predicting. So estimate that. Lay the ruler there, make sure it's straight sideways or horizontal, and then we're just going to strike in the marking that separates the top and the bottom, and it's really quite simple. So now we have gone ahead and we have spelled out our whole message. An ounce of prevention is greater than a pound of cure. And we can start now with, since we've made it this far, we can start with some of the coloring. And so, as you recall, we did our worksheet to help us figure out what our colors will be, and these are the colors that we're going to be using for this particular message. And so we need to extract those from a colored pencil kit, and I just like to keep them in my hand so they don't fall around on the floor. But you know, if you have a bucket, or you can, well, see here, I'm already letting them fall around, or a bucket to put them in, well, that's up to you, however you work. But I found that you can work quicker if you've got the materials at hand. So we need an aqua. I can see a lot of these have already been sharpened or dulled down, so I bet I'm pulling the right ones out of there from when we did the worksheet. Orange as well. There's my magenta. And there's my jade green. I'll bet it's in there somewhere. There's jade green, and somewhere there's a yellow green. I've already got it. Okay, what am I missing? That dark brown and the gray, of course. Now everything else, see, is either been used for a 6th grade project or is being reserved for the 8th grade project. So, let's see if I've got the right number of pencils. See, there should be 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Very good. Alright. Now the ones I'm not going to use for this project I'm going to put away, but there will be a use for them later. And we're going to now get to work with the coloring portion of this, and sometimes you're going to have to sharpen your pencils, that's for sure. So we're going to start out by finding our letter A, and in this case the letter A is tan, magenta, and violet. I know I'm going to have to put these down, it looks like. So here's my tan, here's my magenta, and here is my violet. I will have to sideline these while I sharpen them, but I think that's going to be alright. So when you're sharpening your pencils, you really just want what's called a good working point on them, not one that's really, really, really pointy, because it'll just simply snap off. So, you know, I'm kind of using a point that's very similar to what you see right here. It's not real long and real sharp. Now, I see that this is my magenta here, so I'm just simply going to start by coloring it in. And we might not get very far today, and I do color pretty fast. I've been doing these projects for some time, and so I may get ahead of you almost immediately, and it may take you some additional time as to what you see here on our instructional video. I forgot this, but you should get into this habit. Erase that letter A. Erase the letter every time before you get ready to color over it, because when you color over it, it's very difficult to fix it. It's very difficult to erase through the colored pencil, which is a very waxy material. Alright, meanwhile, we're back here, and we're just trying to get our letter A dealt with today. So this is officially the end of part 2 of our video here for drawing out the message. We successfully got it drawn, and now here we are already coloring on it. That's productive use of class time, and so I hope you're keeping up, and if not, well, then you need to stop the video perhaps, or slow it down, or even just pause it until you catch up with the spot that I'm in, or perhaps the rest of the class. When we're doing work like this, and we're not in a physical classroom together, it's difficult sometimes to, you know, really know how much progress you should be making, because some of your classmates in a physical classroom, you'd be right there watching them work and seeing how fast they should be making progress. But in this environment, where sometimes we have to work alone, it's hard to know if we're keeping up with the projects. But if you're keeping up with this pace of production, you're certainly going to be able to get it done, because I try to work good, but I also try to work fast. Now, it's important that we address all the little skip-overs, you know, where we can see some white paper showing through. It's really critical that, you know, design work especially has very saturated colors, meaning that the colors are pure and unpolluted. And so it's important to be able to get these this visual information really bright, and really, you know, people don't really want to see the background of the paper. People want to see the artwork that's on top of the paper that we're putting down right now. And I'm getting really short on my pencil, and you know, before you get to the point where you start scratching the work, you know, with the wood part, you should probably just resharpen your pencil. I think I'm going to be okay, but next time I use that magenta, I will certainly have to sharpen it. There we go. Okay, quite good. Now, got to go back over it, address all the little skipped over areas, the blank spots. That's looking pretty good. Alright, so if you're working along with me, you're making good progress. So, let's keep it working here. There we go. Now, I think I'm going to not need that for a while, so I do have my violet, and my letter A is magenta here and violet here, so I simply, and that violet's got a little bit of a point still on it. So you want to be careful to try not to snag the other colors that you're coloring on, and many times, especially once you start getting some colored pencil onto these drawings, you're going to want to put something underneath your hand, because your hand can get really quite dirty on the back of it, and that smears around on your artwork, and that really diminishes its beauty. So we're going to cover it up with an index card or a piece of notebook paper, just something to keep your hand clean and keep your drawing clean as well. It colors up a lot more brightly. The colors are much more vivid if the paper is clean. If your paper has pencil lead or graphite all smudged into the surface of it, it's really going to affect how much the colors pop. And And so sometimes you got to hold your breath a little bit right when you're getting right up next to the lines there. Sometimes you have to resharpen the pencil, or if you keep rolling it in your fingertips, and I've said this before to many people, that what happens is you keep a little point on it at all times, and the lead lasts longer, and you're able to get that little point, and you can tuck it into these corners if you need to kind of tighten up your work there. Alright, now it looks like our last color in this one is tan, and I'm going to have to sharpen that one up. So again, you know, sharpening a colored pencil, you should give it maybe 3 or 4 twists into the sharpener, and then be happy if you get a tip that's you know, about that long that you can work with, that's sturdy and doesn't snap off as soon as you start coloring with it. Now I'm going to get up here underneath this piece of tape that's holding my work down, and I'm going to address it first. I'm going to cover up the work I've already done. That is I just don't want my paper moving there. It looks like it moved. I don't know, but it's going to have to. I'm going to have to live with it. So I'm going to, you know, do that corner first, and then tape it back down again so it doesn't move while I'm doing this, you know, instructional video. That's really not a good idea. Okay, I may have to check the camera, in fact. Oop, there we go. Okay, so you got to be real careful when you're working on the corners, because you'll tear your artwork all up. And I do like to tape my work down so I can, you know, color a little bit more with a little bit more enthusiasm there, and not cause it to slip around on the surface. So okay, we're doing all right here. So, oh, you know what that means? That means we're pretty much at the end of this session here. So let me, I'm going to finish this out because I hate to leave a letter undone. And then that, we will, the rest of our project here together for the next several days is simply going to be coloring this in so that the letters that are on our worksheet are used as a guide to color in our letters that are on our message right here. So I'm going to try to work fast here. And you know, if you've been keeping up with the instruction, then you've made good progress. And most of the projects take 10 or 11 days to get done, and in this particular environment, if you're watching it on as an e-learning lesson, or if you're participating in this because you are making up a project or you've missed some school, well, then it's a little bit more complicated than being right there in the classroom, where I can, you know, visually see your work and assist you, and you have to just work independently. And as a result of that, sometimes it's lonely. So, you know, sometimes people will be interested in what you're doing, and they sit there and watch you work and ask you questions sometimes. And that's not always a distraction. Sometimes it is, but it's always interesting. It's always a good thing when somebody else takes an interest in your work, okay? And so if that's your parents or your brothers or sisters or your grandparents or your friends, well, then that's all good. And you know, we want people to take an interest in our work, and we want to do it in such a manner that, you know, they would want it themselves. If we were to give it to them, they would be proud to have it. So these types of messages, you don't just have to spell out the messages that we do in class. You can use this kind of idea to spell out messages of your own and make your own artwork that expresses what you are feeling about a person or a situation, or, you know, missing physical class. I know I really am craving the physical classroom again, and I've not been separated from it that long, but it sure doesn't make me. I really need a place to go to. I'm sure a lot of people really are craving the physical classroom as well. Alright, so all we're doing here before we close it up for the day on this particular lesson is that we're going to just check for all the opacity and aim for all those little blank skipped over areas with our colored pencil, and it looks pretty good from where I'm at here in the art studio. So except for that little strap of tape holding it down up there, which I think I'll take care of here in just a moment. That's been a good session. We'll get back together. Bye.